Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our session on Transform Your Life through Mindful Eating. We have our speaker today, Sarah Edwards, joining us this afternoon to take us on a journey of mindful eating. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Hi there.
And we also have Dr. Supreet from our team to initially begin the webinar with a small presentation regarding our wellness offerings to all of the participants. Dr. Supreet, over to you.
Thank you, Shiva. Thanks a lot. Hi and welcome, Sarah. Looking forward to this session because I think it's important. We learn about mindful eating and focus on how we can, be aware when we are eating and not just go with the flow, that sort of a thing. So looking forward to your session. Welcome again. So hi, everybody. Welcome all to this session today. I hope there are important informations and insights and takeaways. I quickly share my screen. So yes, everyone, apart from the weekly sessions that we conduct every Fridays, we also have myriad of other offerings in wellness space where we offer health screenings. These are your preventive health checks. We offer second opinion for doctor consultations. We offer dental checkups, pharmacy discounts, vision checkups. We also offer counselings like psychological counseling, financial counseling, parenting counseling, nutrition counseling, and relationship counseling. So you can log on to my Swish portal and you can see all these offerings there. Please avail these services and let us know how you feel about that. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. Over to you, Shiva.
Thank you so much, Supreet. Thank you for letting us know of all the services that are available on MySwish. And now we would like to open the floor to Sarah, who's going to take us on a journey of mindful eating. Sarah, over to you.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Dr. Supreet. It was amazing to hear about what a comprehensive wellness program you have for all of your employees. I was really impressed with that. So that's amazing to know that there's such a kind of overall well-being focus. So wow. So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining on a Friday afternoon. I'll just quickly introduce myself before we jump into the topic of mindful eating. So I'm Sarah. I am a certified health and nutrition coach. So I work one-on-one with clients to support them to make healthier life choices and develop a foundation of healthy habits so that they can achieve their health goals. I'm also a chef, a plant-based chef, and I have a cafe here in Bangalore in Indranagar. It's kind of healthy, vibrant, colorful cafe with healthy food, but I like to think mostly delicious food, completely plant-based. And most of the time I'm there hanging out, meeting everybody and trying to show people that eating healthily and eating plant-based isn't boring, doesn't have to be boring at all, and it can be exciting as well. So in case you can hear from my accent, I'm actually from the UK, I'm from London, but I've lived here for the last 6 years. But I am half Sri Lankan, so I came to India just because I've always loved India, to be honest, and I always just had a feeling, a gut feeling that I wanted to live here. So that's why I came here, but I am half Sri Lankan. So I do bring in, my Sri Lankan roots into my cooking, as well as kind of global flavors from around Asia, Europe, America, but I'm really passionate about using local produce. So we're not a business that's all about importing food. We're actually a business that is about flavors from around the world, but food from as local as possible. So that's kind of me and my values, and a bit about kind of why I kind of have this passion for health and nutrition. I do have a non-diet approach, which I'll talk more about. So I'm really not here to tell you what to eat, how many calories. I'm actually here to talk about mindful eating. And I will get into exactly what that is. But I guess I wanted to start with, why am I really passionate about mindful eating? And I am passionate about mindful eating because it transformed my life. And that's why this presentation is called Transform Your Life with Mindful Eating. So I was a normal kind of teenager when I went to college. I was not particularly healthy. I was stuck a bit in a cycle. So I tended to eat whatever was really there. You know, as a student, you don't have much money. I just grab a cheese sandwich. You know, we'd eat late night kind of junk food, and whatever was kind of available on the campus, to grab a packet of crisps, chocolate. And I didn't really think about, you know, my overall health and well-being. And what would happen is I would then focus on weight only as an indicator of whether I was in a good place or not. So then if I gained a bit of weight, I would go, oh my gosh, I've gained weight, I need to go on a diet. And I would go on whatever diet was kind of fashionable at the time, but basically it involved extreme calorie counting and restriction. Some foods completely off limits, like you can't have any chocolate or any crisps at all. And I would also go on these crazy things like meal replacement shakes and things like that, that were being advertised as a weight loss thing. And I'd feel lousy, of course, because I wasn't really nourishing myself. And I'd feel lousy when I was in my, you know, not thinking about health at all and thinking, just eating whatever was there. And I found that I got sick a lot, my weight yo-yoed. And the most important thing was that I had a really, you know, I would say disordered relationship with food, where I was kind of scared of it. Like, oh God, every time I sit down to eat, I end up eating so much. Or I was on a diet and I felt in control. That lasted about a week each time. And then I'd again feel out of control. So I don't know whether any of this is resonating with anyone, any little pattern of a sort of tendency to feel out of control around food, to, you know, have the promise of a diet that's going to solve all of your problems. But if it does, then you're in the right session, because when I discovered something called mindful eating, which is all about slowing down, thinking about what you're eating, but giving yourself permission to enjoy your food. And what I found is that slowly, not overnight, it's not like a diet, like, oh, from Monday, I'm going to do mindful eating and that's going to solve all of my problems. It was much more like, I am going to slowly but surely become reattuned with my hunger, my fullness, how my body feels, enjoying eating. And this naturally was a process of healing and learning for me. And what I want you to get out of this session is at least some ideas. It's very hard to cover it, of course, in just 1 hour, but is for you to feel like there is another way other than what, unfortunately, society is pretty hung up on: weight loss, diets, you know, and then advertising junk food at you. And it becomes a really difficult food landscape to navigate. So let me start by, I'm just going to share my screen with my presentation. So what is mindful eating? So we can break it down into 3 areas. I think the best place to start with what is mindful eating is to actually think about the opposite. What is mindless eating? So mindless eating, I would describe, and I'm sure this will ring a few bells, there's absolutely no shame in it, but it can be anything from, you know, when you end up having like a bag of chips at the cinema or popcorn, and, you know, the next thing you know, you're sort of eating it, you're not really thinking, you're watching the film, and the next thing you know, you sort of hit the bottom of the, you know, of the bag. It happens when sometimes we sit down to eat, we're not really thinking, and the next thing we know, we're completely stuffed. But conversely, it's also, you know, mindlessly following calorie counting without really thinking about, do I feel satisfied after that meal? Do I feel like I have enough energy for this day? So both are examples of mindless eating. So conversely, mindful eating, it's a huge topic, and I've just chosen to break it down into these three areas. And what I have sort of thought about is one is about thinking about what we eat, so making more conscious choices. So where does my food come from, and what are the ingredients? What do I know about the supply chain? So we start to think about where our food actually comes from. The second thing, and this is sort of the most practical part of it, is slow, aware eating. It's all about slowing down your eating style, like whether you're eating a meal, a snack, anything, just slow down and bring in some conscious awareness into that process. And finally, it is about tuning into our body cues. So crucially, our body is very, very clever. It's a complex machine. It does need a lot of nutrients, but it also knows a lot and can give you a lot of information about when you're hungry and honoring that hunger, and also when you're full and stopping to eat when you're gently full. And I'm really going to dive into that later in the talk, because that is almost the crux of the issue that a lot of people experiences. They don't eat when they're hungry, and then they get really hungry, and then they massively overeat. So if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And I'd love to give you a tool, which I'm going to share with you, which is going to help you to navigate that. So I think that the best way to start is, I'm actually going to stop sharing because I would rather talk to you directly for a little bit before I kind of go into the rest of the presentation, where I give you a few more actionable tips. But I wanted to start by demonstrating to you what mindful eating can look like. Now, I know Shiva sent out an email asking you to bring a raisin, a dry fruit, but any food that you have to hand would be great to do this next exercise. I have a jar of raisins here, which I'm going to sort of take you through a practical exercise now. So firstly, if everybody just takes their dry fruit, I don't know whether you have anything, Dr. Suprit or Shiva, but if you have any food at all with you, it's about, so this is a raisin, I'm going to hold it up to the camera. So if you do have a raisin or a nut or another piece of dry fruit or any food, the first thing I want you to do, this is sort of really getting into how we can slow down, is to firstly just look at it. Okay. So if you if you don't have any food with you, you can sort of imagine yourself doing this along with me. So I'm holding up the raisin to the camera. Have a look at it. Firstly, what is it? I mean, what is a raisin? Sometimes we'll just eat them without thinking, but in case I'm sure everybody knows, but in case you're not aware, it is actually a dried grape, a single dried grape. And when I'm looking at it, I can see that it's got a wrinkled surface. It's kind of a yellow color, but there are black colored ones. So I'm really looking and engaging with what it actually looks like, which I think as you're doing it, or if you're watching me do it, you realize how rare that actually is, to really look at something before you eat it. And the other thing is, where has it come from? Maybe it's been grown in India in one of the vineyards. Maybe it's been imported. And what journey has it been on? Like, how many people have been involved in the harvest, the growing, the harvesting, the transporting of this raisin? So it's sometimes just worth just thinking about that and really connecting with what it is that you're eating. So then the next thing is, just as you're about to put it in your mouth, just notice whether you have any anticipation within your body, or perhaps within your mouth, about, oh, what is this going to taste like? Perhaps you're a little hungry, perhaps you're feeling stuffed, perhaps, you're intrigued to kind of do this. So just notice any bodily sensations in the mouth, perhaps in the hands. And now finally, I'm going to let you eat it. Put it in your mouth I'm not going to do it because I won't be able to talk. But the first thing is to put it in your mouth and just feel the texture with your tongue. and in your mouth. And then finally, you can bite down on it. So as you bite down on it, just observe that there is a sweetness. If it's a raisin, of course, if you're eating a nut, maybe just try and observe what the initial flavors are and keep chewing. So what I want you to do is chew this until nothing is left in your mouth, which is not the normal way of chewing, but just try to experience this as a almost disappearing within the mouth, and notice the flavors. So, I mean, if anyone wants to shove anything in the chat about that they're noticing if they are doing the exercise, in terms of the flavor changing the longer you chew it, the fact that actually if you do chew something for long enough, it basically does disappear in your mouth, which is, again, not something we regularly experience. And finally, just notice the sensation of swallowing. Okay, what does it feel like? Just almost try and be mindfully aware of the food traveling down into your stomach. And just reflect on whether you enjoyed the taste of what you ate, whether it wasn't really something that you enjoyed, any interesting like flavors or textures. Do feel free to put them in the chat. So if no one has any kind of when I do this in person, what I find is people often say, oh, with the raisin, like, oh, there's a kind of hint of lemon, or, oh, it's completely disappeared from my mouth. And I've never really tasted a raisin. Like, all these different flavors are coming first. It's very sweet, but then a sourness comes, a lemony flavor comes. So it's very interesting how much more we can get out of our food when we eat slowly. So how is this relevant to mindful eating? So, Shiva, I thought we could do our first poll now and ask everyone, do they feel, if your friends and family asked you, if you asked your friends and family, am I a fast eater, a slow eater, or do I eat just right? What would they say about me, or what would I say about myself? So I'd be really interested to know what people feel that they are, or what kind of we tend to be described as by the people that we eat with on a regular basis.
We have some responses coming in, Sarah. We'll take another 20-30 seconds.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I recognize that someone said the raisin tastes better, while I'm eating it. I think it's very funny because normally when we eat raisins, I'm sure you'd be doing more like this, like getting a handful and then eating several at a time. What we did was really break it down to one raisin at a time. And of course, it's just an exercise. I'm not suggesting that you eat everything like that from now on. It's an extreme version, but it's almost like an extreme version to help illustrate how we can maybe meet in the middle and eat with greater awareness. Yes, somebody mentioned, that's Naveen, mentioned, like, eating slowly generates a lot more saliva in the mouth. That is such a good observation. And the really interesting thing about that is, saliva is the first step of digestion, along with the physical grinding that our teeth do. And that will improve your digestion. The more saliva is able to act on the food in your mouth, that will actually enhance your digestion, and we'll come to that later.
Sure. Yeah, Sarah, if you can see the
I can see.
Of the poll. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty even split, which is actually fantastic. Fantastic to see that there are a lot of slow eaters and people who might say they're just right. And like everybody who's in the fast eater group, I also used to identify and was constantly told by my mum that I was a fast eater. And that is something that we're going to talk about today, about slowing down. Thank you for sharing and for being honest about that. Sandeep also mentioned a stronger taste in the date that perhaps, you wouldn't normally notice when you're eating a date without really engaging in the flavors in the mouth. So when we think more about mindful eating, we'll think about the 3 different areas. So the first one is about when I was talking about the raisin and I was saying, what is it? Okay, where has it come from? And when we can try and apply something like that to our food in general, we can start to think about the choices that we're making. That can be, what are the ingredients of this, juice which I'm having? So sometimes we might think, okay, juice is healthy, it's fruit. But when we actually look at the packet of juice, the carton of juice in our fridge, we realize it's from concentrate. The primary ingredient is then sugar. Plus there's a bunch of other IS numbers that we don't quite understand. This was a big awakening for me, was just consciously thinking about what it is that is in the food that I'm eating, rather than just accepting, what our assumptions or what we might be marketed at. Another, and that goes even further to when we're thinking about junk food. Now, I am not somebody that believes that you should never eat junk food, that you should be absolutely militant in eating healthily and only eating the best foods. I actually think the opposite, in the sense of, I believe we do need to let go of labels about that is off limits. I should never, ever eat that, because what that sometimes does is make us feel more drawn to it and almost obsess about it. Actually, what happens when we give ourselves permission to eat anything whilst also being conscious of what we are eating, it tends to be a lot easier to be more relaxed around food. So rather than saying, I can never eat chips because they're full of calories and it's really bad for me, you can say, yeah, I can eat chips if I want to. What are chips? Okay, they are often fried. They're fried often in oil, which is reused many, many times in the chip shop. Maybe I don't really feel like eating them anymore. But then one time they're there in a bowl and they look really appetizing and you have a few and you're like, that was good. And then you're like, I think I'm done. So rather than being like, I can't eat those chips, I shouldn't eat them. Oh, I can't eat them. No, I'm on a diet, I shouldn't eat them. And oh, I've eaten one. Oh, it's so good, I'm just going to eat them all. And the bowl is empty. So I don't know whether, again, that is resonating with anybody. But that tendency to have off-limits foods, not really think about why we crave them and what's in them. Like what, we crave them because humans often do crave salty and fatty foods. That's okay. We can sort of accept that about ourselves. And it, whilst at the same time, when we actually really think about what that food is, we might find that we either don't crave it, that we find it a lot easier to just eat it occasionally. The other thing is about thinking about, where has my food come from? Like I said at the beginning, I'm really passionate about local produce and also about, fair wages for farmers and, not consuming artificial ingredients and chemicals like pesticides. So as I started to become aware, like I told you, I didn't used to think about any of this stuff. And as I learned the process of mindful eating, I started to make a few, have a few more questions in my mind that did lead me to often feel that actually, you know what, I don't feel like making that choice. I don't feel like having that, buying those, imported whatever that have traveled halfway around the world and are anyway full of chemicals. And I'm going to look to more local foods that are available. The amazing thing is, and I can only sort of say this, it doesn't happen overnight, but my experience was, as I said, I went from being somebody that craved and binged regularly and had a disordered relationship with food to now being someone that when I gave myself permission to not have off limits foods, but also started to really consciously think about what I wanted, about my values and how they applied to what I ate, and really consciously understood about why I would not want to put like chemicals or artificial flavorings or preservatives into my body, I find that now I have a very much more sort of relaxed and enjoyable relationship with food. So I can only, encourage you to start thinking. One actionable tip is just look at the ingredients labels on packaged foods and start to like do a bit of Googling and understand a bit more about what they are, and then make your decisions about how often you want to eat them. So the second thing which we've been talking about, and which is almost the most actionable thing to take away, is about slowing down the rate at which you eat and bringing more conscious awareness to that. Now, I'm going to give you some actionable tips after this. So all I want you to think about now is, how that slow eating of the raisin helped you to engage more with the taste. The other thing I want to sort of just make a case for, why is slowing down so important, particularly slowing down even if the food we're eating isn't maybe the healthiest option. Maybe there is a little bit of I know it often is when I know I shouldn't be eating something, that's when I sort of eat the fastest and without like switching off. And actually what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to engage with eating slowly, no matter what it is that you're eating. And one of the reasons for doing that, and there was actually a study in the US where they gave the same two groups, so the same people on two different treatment groups. One was they had a big plate of pasta and different, cheese that they could put on top of it. And they said, okay, try and eat this as fast as you can. Eat as much as you want. There's an unlimited amount, but eat as fast as you can, and then stop when you can't eat anymore, when you're full. And the second day, they did the same food, but they said this time you have to eat as slowly as possible as you can. And again, stop when you've had enough. There's an unlimited amount. Just stop when you feel full. Now, what happened was the day where they all ate really fast, they ended up eating more food, like in calorie terms, more food than on the day they ate slowly. But the really interesting thing is that an hour and 2 hours and 3 hours later, when they were repeatedly asked, like, are you still full? Are you still satisfied from your meal, or are you hungry for a snack? The fast eating group reported feeling less satisfied and more hungry, even though they'd eaten more food by about 100 calories regularly. Like they ate 100 more calories. And then when they were asked regularly after that, they reported feeling more hungry more quickly and in need of a snack more quickly. The slow eating group, who ate 100 calories less, ended up feeling satisfied for far longer into the afternoon. So I think that's a really interesting finding, not just about the amount you eat, but about the extent to which you feel satisfied and how long after you eat that you feel satisfied. So that's my plug for why this is important, why this might help you. It's not all about eating less. It's actually about slowing down in order to enjoy our food more and to feel more satisfied, so that hunger isn't constantly on our minds. And the third area, which I'm going to go into more depth now, is mindfulness. If you know anything about kind of the broader mindfulness movement, which is all about becoming more aware moment to moment. So it might be, within a meditation practice, or even just walking or interacting with people, just being more present and aware and not have your mind elsewhere. So we can do that with eating, and we can do that with our body. Like I said, our body gives us lots of clues and cues, and mindful eating is all about tuning into those cues and getting really attuned to them and good at reading them, and helping, using those cues to help us to, eat well and feel good. So I am going to share my screen now, because I want you to have some really actionable takeaways. We've talked a lot about mindful eating. It's this big nebulous area, but let's give you some very specific actionable tips that you can actually start taking away with you, so that after this session, you might be able to start practicing them straight away. So here are my kind of 5 actionable tips. I'm going to take you through them one by one. So one really great tip that you can start doing from your next meal this evening is start the meal with a moment of gratitude. So I don't know whether any of you have any experience of, learning about gratitude or a gratitude practice, but starting the meal with gratitude means just taking a moment, like we did with the raisin, to just think about, where has this food come from? What is on my plate? Or even if it's a snack, where has it come from? Who's been involved? Perhaps, it's you that's cooked the food, but perhaps it's, somebody else, a cook or a member of your family, a parent or a partner. And we can just take a moment to give that lovely feeling of gratitude, where we're just like, wow, I'm so grateful that I have this food in front of me and that I have enough to eat. What that can do is just really remind us to, it helps us to take a pause before we, get in and just start eating. And secondly, it's partly about that, raising that conscious awareness. Like I said, with me, what that helped to do, not overnight, but over time, was make me from somebody that would just eat whatever was there to being someone that actually made naturally healthy choices. I tend to crave healthy food and want to eat healthier food, like whole foods and plant-based foods, because of that process. So rather than forcing yourself to make a choice towards a more whole or natural food, you start to actually want to make that choice when we stop and think about where our food has come from. So like I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen immediately after this session, that you introduce a moment of gratitude. And any of you that have kids, or even if you do tend to eat as a family, it's a really beautiful practice to do with others. Just everybody taking a moment to just have some gratitude for the food on their plate and anybody involved with getting that food to them, farmers, helpers, drivers, anything. So it's a great thing to help your kids learn to appreciate what they have. Okay, the second thing is count your chews. So like I said with the raisin, when we were chewing it, we experienced A, that it fully broke down, B, that we activated our saliva, which is really, really important in terms of digestion. And finally, that we experienced more flavors and more joy, which is actually one of the most important things, especially in this day and age, of just having small moments of joy while we're eating. So when we count our chews, we're just really, I would say 20 to 30 times. I'm not saying you do this forever, but this is a tip that can help you get the muscle memory of chewing what at first will feel excessively. I'm not saying every single time you put something in your mouth. If it's something like a banana, you probably won't need to chew it 20 times. But if it's something more complex that needs to be broken down, like, a vegetable with its skin on, like a sweet potato with its skin on in a sabzi, you actually do need to chew that many times. So at first it might feel unnatural, but what I'm suggesting to you is force yourself at first so that it becomes a habit. And that will really help with your digestion, and it will really help with you experiencing flavors. Now, the next one is honestly something that everybody seems to resonate with when I say, which is when we're eating, what we tend to do is, like, if this is my plate, we tend to like make a mouthful, put it in our mouth, we're chewing, and in the meantime, we're making the next mouthful, so that literally the moment I swallow, the next mouthful is ready to go, and I put it in my mouth, almost like a conveyor belt. And it's the same if you're eating with a spoon, like your spoon is almost coming up to your mouth as you swallow. And I don't know whether this is resonating with anyone. It certainly resonated with me when I was learning to eat mindfully, because I didn't realize the extent to which I didn't even take a pause between each mouthful. So a practical tip is keep your hand on the table while you're chewing. Swallow, take a little deep breath, make your next mouthful, and then eat. It doesn't need to be a conveyor belt. And what this will do naturally, if you can remember to do it, is it will slow down your eating time probably by half. Now, actually, in this group, we have quite a lot of slow eaters and people that feel they eat just right, which is actually unusual. I normally find that the majority of people feel they eat a little bit too fast. So maybe because of your amazing well-being program, you've already engaged with thinking about this kind of thing, which would be amazing. But still, for the fast eaters, and I'd say even for the people that feel that they already eat slowly, there's always an opportunity to bring a bit more mindfulness in, which is while your hand's on the table, just bring in some awareness to what you're eating, the flavors, like we did with the raisin. And I know that was completely exaggerated. Obviously, I think you'd lose friends fast if every time you ate, you were eating like the raisin really slowly and chewing, and anticipating your bite. You might not get invited to dinner very much if that became your absolute norm. But the principle of that being an extreme version is so that you can understand a bit about what I'm saying when I'm saying just tune into some of those flavors while your hand is on the table. And again, when you eat with your family, this is just such a wonderful thing to do to connect you. Like, say, like, okay, everybody, like, let's all try and, really taste these flavors today. Let's keep our hands on the table while we're chewing. So you can make it a group activity. And, like I said, if you do have kids, I promise you, this is a gift. It is a gift to get your kids in the habit of eating slowly when they're young, because it's much quicker to learn. And then they don't have to undo that. Undo years of eating fast when they're older, when it's much harder to undo because of our muscle memory and our habits. And also it is, like I said, I don't take a diet approach where I truly believe everybody should be trying to lose weight. But in terms of overeating leading to, a need to weight manage, this is a really valid and viable way of not allowing yourself to overeat on the regular, which in turn is the thing which kind of leads to like weight loss, weight gain over time. So, like I said, I do feel very strongly that we can be healthy at any size. It's more about our habits than, a number on the scale, or, whether we look like how we, the people on Instagram that we're trying to look like. They're not good measures of health. Our habits are the best measure of our true health and well-being, as well as our immunity and our, feeling of feeling good and positive. But overeating is a kind of trap that a lot of us fall into, and eating fast is a contributor to that. So that's something that that was a bit off topic, but I wanted to mention that as well for those people that are looking for weight management support, but are fed up of yo-yo dieting like I was. Now, the next thing is learn to use the hunger and fullness scale. This is my favorite thing. And I am going to jump ahead to the next slide to show you what the hunger and fullness scale actually is and how you can use it. It's a tool that I use with my clients. So this is the hunger and fullness scale. So I mean, it's written out here. It's pretty easy to then, imagine this in your mind, have a conceptual hunger and fullness scale in your mind. So I'll just talk you through it. 1 on the hunger scale is ravenous. Okay. It is when you are so hungry that it's all you can think about, and you may experience some additional symptoms. So we talk a lot now about being hangry. So you just feel very irritable because you're so hungry. Other people actually feel faint, and they feel, completely preoccupied with when they're going to get their food. On the other side of the scale, we have so stuffed that you feel nauseous. So it's beyond stuffed. It's actually, physically feeling unwell. Now, what obviously, I'm sure it's, it's not a surprise to you that what I'm advocating is that you never allow yourself to go to these extreme ends of the scale. Of course, sometimes we can't help it, but generally what I'm seeing is that people tend to, especially now with, say, the rise of intermittent fasting, people do get to a 1 or a 2. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with intermittent fasting in principle, but I am saying it's not helpful to you and your ability to eat mindfully, consciously, and in a way that supports your health to regularly. Of course, sometimes we might be in a situation where for whatever reason, we forgot our snack and we can't get out of a meeting and we might be ravenous. That's a one-off. But if we are regularly, especially if we're organizing our life in such a way that we are ravenous regularly, what tends to happen then is it becomes extremely difficult to eat slowly, to eat with awareness and consciousness. And as a result, we then tend to overeat because we're eating so fast that we go too far. Also, eating, until we're stuffed or feel nauseous, tends to lead us to feel uncomfortable, which is not what we want on a daily basis. We want to feel light and energetic after we've eaten. That should be your norm. But also, we can see the problem. If we regularly overeat to the point that we feel sick, this is going to have an impact on our physiology. Okay, that is, our bodies need, there is a sweet spot. It's not an exact number. Like, again, I don't advocate calories. I'm not talking about calories here, but there's a sweet spot, which isn't a number. It's a feeling. It's a feeling of being satisfied. So what I'm suggesting, and neutral, as you can imagine, is like maybe, an hour or 2 after you've eaten, you're neither hungry, you're not really thinking about food, but you're not particularly feeling any sensation of fullness either. So what I'm suggesting to you in the way to use this hunger and fullness scale is, at first it might sound weird, but it's amazing how quickly you will be able to tune into where you are on the scale if you think about it before you eat each time. And just keep asking yourself during the day, like, where am I on the scale? Now, what I'm advocating is that you eat somewhere between a 3 and a 4. Imagine roughly a 3.5. You're not extremely hungry, but you are hungry. You feel what I would call gentle hunger pangs, where you're like, oh, yeah, food sounds good right about now. It seems appetizing when you think about it, but you don't experience any of the negative symptoms that come along with being too hungry, like hangry, or in any way weak or obsessed with food. So you're like, yeah, it would be nice to eat sort of, in the next hour. You're not feeling like I need to eat right now or I will blow up. You're thinking like, yeah, half an hour, yeah, that would be good. And then you can start to think about when you'd want to eat and plan it accordingly. So what I'm then suggesting is that you eat up until somewhere around a 6 and of course, on particular days, like a festival day, you might be culturally in a situation where, it's part of the culture to really overeat. And I'm not suggesting that that is wrong. It's a couple of times a year. It's not going to make a big difference. What I'm sort of hypothesizing, though, is that a lot of us fast eaters will regularly go beyond 7, 8, 9. And that is where, if done on a regular basis, we are giving our bodies excess food. And that sweet spot, which is the right amount of food for our bodies to deal with, can really, if we give our bodies too much, there's a whole bunch of things that we're causing a strain on our bodies. It's not just that we might gain weight. It's also that we're putting pressure on our bodies to expel excess food. The digestive system is amazing. It's a miracle. But if we overload it, it is a huge amount of energy that gets used on digestion rather than on other very important systems in our bodies, like detoxification and repair. And those things are things which will happen absolutely naturally. But if we're constantly in a state of digestion because we've overloaded our systems, it's not good for our overall health. So that's another thing to think about it's not just about how we look. It's honestly about how we feel and giving our bodies the best chance to do all of the things that are important. So the final point is, and this goes back to point 2 and 3 about slowing down, is if we eat fast, even if we eat when we're around a 3.5, gently hungry, I feel really like ready to eat right now. The food will taste delicious as I start to chew it. If I eat too fast, it's just very easy to overshoot. If I eat slowly, I want to just slowly move towards neutral. Maybe if it's a snack and I know I've got to eat again in an hour and a half for dinner, I might want to stop there. But if it's my meal, my meal that I'm having at lunchtime and I have to spend the rest of the day at work in the afternoon, I'm going to want to eat until I'm somewhere around a 6, where I feel satisfied. Now, I know this is a bit intangible, what I'm saying, but I do promise you that it is something that you can feel, this sweet spot of satisfaction where I'm like, oh, I'm done. The food will start to taste less good with your slow chews, which you can only be aware of if you're chewing slowly. And you start to feel just that like you're done. And that brings me to my next point where I'm going to go back, which is resign from the clean plate club. And this is a big one. It's a big one in all cultures. It was where I was growing up in England, same in India. There's a huge stigma of leaving food on your plate. Sometimes it's just habit. Often there's a narrative, right? You can't leave food on your plate because there's people starving. And it's, you shouldn't waste it when there are other people who don't have enough to eat. So it's coming from a good place. It's something we're taught when we're young. What I would say is, the problem with that is if you have eaten enough food for your body and you know that you're in that point of satisfaction, if you eat excess beyond that, just so that your plate is clean, and you sort of, as you get to do this more, you'll know when that is, you're just giving your body that waste, right? You think you're not wasting it, but your body, when it has excess food, it will either convert it into fat. It will have to detoxify more. Somebody still has to deal with it as waste. And it's not helpful to just imagine you're a human garbage can just tipping the last bit of food into your mouth rather than into the garbage. What would be less wasteful would be to compost it, get a compost at home. If you're worried about the ethics of it, is get a compost at home. Like cooked food is great for moving your compost along. That's what I do. And also the other thing is, as I've got much stronger in my mindful eating practice, I tend to be better at judging the amount that I need to eat in the first place. And I put less food on my plate so that there is more still in the serving bowl, which is much easier for me to keep in the fridge and use tomorrow, or to give away to somebody that needs the food more than me. But the excess food on your plate, which if you accidentally took too much, don't guilt trip yourself into thinking that you're helping other people by eating that food, because you're not actually. So it is a bit of a stigma, and I'm encouraging you to become mindfully aware of when it's that stigma that's causing you to eat more. My suggestion is, the way we eat in India is so beautiful. Often there's lots of things on available, and we help ourselves. We do that for our children as well. And the best thing to do is take small amounts, take a pause, use your hunger and fullness scale. If you're still hungry, go and get some more. If you're not, stop and just learn to sit with the discomfort, perhaps at first, of leaving a bit of food on your plate. And again, I'd really encourage you to think about this with your children. Of course, teach them not to waste food, but there are other ways of not wasting food. So those are my actionable tips to practice mindfulness. Now, I know, as a health coach, I tend to be asked a lot about, what should I eat? What should I eat? What should my diet be? And as I'm sure you've realized through this talk, that isn't the game I'm in. I'm not here to tell you, personally, I am a plant-based eater. I do tend to, I really gravitate towards eating mostly fruits and vegetables. I love like tofu as my protein source. But I'm not here to tell you how to eat. I'm not here to try and persuade you to go vegan. But because I truly believe that everybody should focus on how they eat first in terms of mindful eating. And that guides you. You can trust your intuition. Some people feel more drawn towards different types of eating styles, different times of day. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about that. But what I don't want to do is to tell you exactly what to eat, like, oh, everybody should go vegan or everybody should be on a keto diet. It's pretty obvious probably by now that that's not what I'm about. However, I do know that everybody does want more tips for eating well. So I do just want to end with a couple of tips on gentle nutrition. Now, the reason I say gentle nutrition is because when you think about all of these 5 actionable tips, none of them about what you eat. They're all about how you eat and your relationship with your food and the eating experience. And that is where I believe you should start, because I know that when I was trying to break out of a cycle of binging and restricting, overeating, gaining weight, dieting, losing weight, I know that I kept going to, what should I eat? I'll eat this. Once, if I do that, then I'll be fine. And it wasn't until I started with how I eat, before I even tried to change anything. So I was doing this with pizza, pasta. I mean, I'm from the UK, and I don't know if anyone knows anything about UK student culture, but it basically involves eating pizza, pasta, kebabs, chips. So it was a really difficult thing to eat slowly with actually that kind of, without kind of, it's sort of easier to do this when you feel pious. Oh, I'm eating such a healthy meal and I can eat slowly and consciously. But what I'm suggesting is start now with whatever your normal diet is, whatever your eating style is, start with this. And then as you adopt these practices, you'll find that it's a lot easier to adopt what I call, and what, I didn't come up with it, it's an intuitive eating term devised by nutritionists in the States, which is called gentle nutrition, which is all about principles rather than hard and fast rules. So the principles of gentle nutrition, here are 4 tips. One is eat the rainbow. Okay, so eating foods of different colors actually is a recipe for eating well, because, and I don't mean blue food dye in those sweets and yellow food dye in those sweets. I mean, think about what's available in nature when we think about vegetables. And this is, again, if you do have kids, a wonderful thing to practice with kids. The purple of a beetroot compared to the red of a tomato in the presentation, compared to the leafy greens of palak, compared to, the orange of a pumpkin. And if you try to think like, okay, what colors have I eaten? Not every day, but say over the course of a week, what veggies and fruits have I eaten? And therefore, how can that guide me as to what we could have on the menu today or later in the week? And get your kids involved, ask them, say, I haven't eat the rainbow chart, actually, which I'd be more than happy to share with Supreet and Shiva to share with you all, which is something you can put on your fridge to, we had a pumpkin sabzi last night. So what should we have tonight? Have we got enough greens this week? And it's a really great way of having a dialogue with kids, but it's not just for kids. Okay, Eat the Rainbow might sound a bit childish, but what I would say is it's absolutely a valid way to think as an adult as well. The second thing is to try and prioritize whole foods. Now, note, I said prioritize. I didn't say never, ever, ever eat processed foods ever again. They're the devil food. I would never say that, because it's normal to indulge in different types of food over the course, of your life. But prioritizing whole foods, brown rice or red rice that grows so abundantly in South, whole wheat over maida, but also about, fruits and veggies rather than, say having a juice from concentrate. Avoid packaged foods that are like fortified or that have all these health benefits, or that they're like low calorie diet foods. And just think about, in nature, what is the natural form? And processing, of course, includes cooking, blending, that's fine. But at least when I buy it, is it in its whole form? So that leads to a greater intake of fiber and the nutrients that are naturally available, instead of the foods where in processing, the nutrients have been stripped away. Eat more plants is a really good rule to live by. Now, like I said, I am not saying go vegan like me, because that's what I think is best. Whether you identify as a non-vegetarian, vegetarian, vegan, anything in between, it's about eating more plants, not saying what you shouldn't eat, but what you should eat. Eat more plants, eat more veggies, nuts, seeds, whole grains, they're all plants. And we want to be trying to eat many, many, many plants during the day. Now that sounds obvious, but imagine a situation where you're just having, say, a dosa and chutney for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch from like a shop that you grabbed on the way. And then maybe at dinner, traditionally, you might have some lentils and some sabzi along with some rice or whatever. But in that case, you're really only having like a lot of plants in your evening meal. Of course, coconut chutney is really, really good for you. South Indian food is some of the healthiest food. I know actually you're across India. Like home cooked food is extremely healthy. But what I'm increasingly seeing is, replacing that with packaged foods or food on the go because we're so busy. And you realize like, wow, in that meal, I basically didn't eat any plants. It's just noodles, it's just a sandwich with a slice of cheese in the middle. So just trying to think about, am I eating enough plants? Gut health is a whole other topic. I'm sure that's something you guys are going to touch on, because we know now that gut health is crucial to overall health. But eating more plants in their whole form is something that's going to support that. And you will feel that as you become more in tune with your body. As you eat more fiber, your digestion becomes amazing. And when we eat a very processed food diet, we tend to struggle more with digestion. And finally, I've already talked about this, eat local. It supports your local community, farmers. It has less of a carbon footprint, and, imported or foods that have been packaged for a long time will be less nutrient rich. So it is a way of like fortifying your diet with more nutrients if you tend to eat locally available fruits and veggies. And do think about organic if possible, because unfortunately the pesticides can have negative impacts on our health and can impact children. So it's just, where possible, try to choose organic foods. So that's really the end of, my presentation. I know I've covered a lot. It's actually such a broad topic. But Shiva, do you want to we wanted to open the floor for any questions or observations, or just sharing your own experiences. That would be great. And the other poll was, out of the 5, if we go back to the 5 mindfulness tips, it would be great to see whether which of those tips you might actually want to take forward.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for a wonderful presentation. I think personally for me, there are a lot of takeaways from this particular session, especially the one that where you said you have to put your hands on the table before you take the next mouthful. So I'm definitely going to try that from the next meal that I'm going to have, because my hands are always busy in the plate, taking the next mouthful. But there's one question, a particular question on the chat that I want to read out to you. And if you can answer, that'll be really great. So Aniket says, how could we manage eating fast when we have less time to spend between meetings, work, and how to make it practically possible to eat slowly in today's fast-paced lifestyle?
I think that's such a great question. And you have raised an important point, because it isn't always possible. However, even if we're eating on the go or in a meeting, we can do this, because the slower we eat, the more we're able to also, engage with what else is going on around us in terms of speaking to people. So that's even if you're eating a snack on the go, say like in transport or in a meeting, I would say that it is possible to slow down. But I do understand that what Annika I think is getting at is sometimes you don't have you don't get an hour-long leisurely window in which to eat. I completely understand that. But I would challenge you that, can you make a little bit more time? If you have only 10 minutes, instead of kind of trying to fit in a lot into that 10 minutes, really try and whatever sort of time you have available, try and eat slow enough that you actually fill that time. So that can be a good way of helping you to slow down as well. But you have my complete understanding and empathy. I do understand it's not as simple. We're not all sitting around just with as much time in the world. But at the same time, I do believe this is so important, firstly. And secondly, that we can make a bit more time. Another key thing is, often we'll be eating and scrolling on our phones as part of our fast-paced lifestyle. We might have to reply to things. Again, is it possible to just bring some awareness? Because often when we're scrolling, just like if we were watching TV, we tend to tune out of the eating experience. Can we keep, even if we are on a 15-minute lunch break, can we slowly but surely kind of prioritize the eating experience in that time, and not use it as a chance to do a million other things?
Understood.
And I've just seen that Deepak said we do have a ritual each day before eating to pray about the food and the people involved. And I know that's true. That's so amazing. Not everybody, who was listening may actually do that. And I'm encouraging you, no matter what your family tendencies, whatever, if that is a ritual, absolutely continue. If it isn't, or if you're from a different culture, it's just about really, really having that moment of gratitude before the meal. And it is amazing that that's already something that does happen in India.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, Sarah. We have another question from Prabhat. Says, when you say eat more plants and eat local, do you mean eating raw diet? Further, should we avoid eating certain type of foods in morning
Yeah,
or evening meal?
that is a really helpful question. Um, when when I say eat more plants, I don't mean raw. As in, raw is fine, particularly, if you've got, it's mango season now, that's a way to eat locally, and probably you are going to eat it raw. But no, I mean more plants. Now, that might be a pumpkin, which you clearly have to cook, or I don't know why I keep saying pumpkin, like sweet potato or potato, gobi, anything which you do have to cook, and indeed things which you may tend to eat raw, like fruits, nuts, and also, I do personally, and this is where this is all about you tuning into your own your body's cues. So personally, I do best on a mixture. I've never tried the raw diet. That wasn't one of the silly fad diets which I tried. I personally don't believe that it's helpful to say, oh, everybody should eat a raw diet, or that, because actually what our body craves is variety of food, variety of, different types of veggies. Like, again, it's not about saying like, I'm going to meal prep for this week, I'm going to create the same meal. You see this a lot on Instagram where people are like, I've meal prepped for the week, and it's the same like chicken, rice, broccoli meal in the fridge for every day, because it's healthy and because the macros are balanced. But our body doesn't want the same meal every day. So like with the eat the rainbow point about eating the different colors of fruits and vegetables over the course of a week, and literally thinking, have I already eaten a lot of things which are red, and I've eaten nothing which is purple? Maybe I should try and make a beetroot sabzi tomorrow, or a brinjal dish, rather than, just eating the same thing over and over again. But at the same time, you can think that way in terms of styles of cooking. Sometimes my body does want a salad of mostly raw foods. I don't know why, but I can now listen to that and say, okay, that is what it wants. Other times I just want like a warm, totally cooked meal, perhaps of a stew with appam, or like a soup with bread. So it's actually not about saying eating a raw diet, but it is about saying, have I got enough variety, and am I becoming more aware of what I want and when, and do I honor that? Because if I ignore when I want that steaming stew because I'm on a raw diet and I need to eat only raw chopped fruits and vegetables, I'm going to crave that more and more until I'm obsessed with it. The second point about should we avoid eating certain types of food in the morning and evening meal, everybody is different, and it's a great question. Of course, maybe there are some rules that maybe are helpful to think about, like not eating a really heavy, spicy meal just before bed, because you will need to then be digesting that. But actually, our sleep is ideally a time for repair and detoxification. So ideally, we'll eat perhaps ideally 3 hours before we go to bed. Again, sort of back to the earlier point that it's not always possible, but what we might find is that we notice that we feel a lot better and sleep a lot better if we eat different things before bed and how close to bed. So probably the answer is not necessarily rules, but more through the practice of mindful eating. My feeling is you start to get an intuition about what works best for you, when to eat. Like a lot of people ask me about intermittent fasting, for example, which is this typical thing of should I not eat until 12 and then stop eating at 8? Now, I'm not against the practice or the sort of principles rather of having a longer window where you don't eat, because I do think there is a problem with kind of constantly grazing in, like I said, activating your digestive system constantly. So that is definitely something to think about. But at the same time, if that's forcing you to, you have to not eat anything until 12, and then you have to have a smoothie. And some days you may not feel like that, and it may not actually suit your body. So I guess what I'm saying is just start with the simple tips which I've given, and see whether it helps you to realize which types of food you do best with in the morning and in the evening.
Great. Thanks for that, Sarah. We have another interesting question, actually, from KCR, who says biryani has a lot of spices in it, which is good for health, they say.
Yeah.
How about eating it only once a day? Do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions on that?
And this is a great question. I love biryani. It's one of my favorites. I have a jackfruit biryani because I don't eat meat, but I really like the kind of having that like chunkier texture rather than just veggies. So I have like a jackfruit and veg biryani that I make sometimes. I think that spices, I didn't really have time to talk about spices, but the amazing thing about being in India is the abundance of spices. They do truly have health properties. Each one has different health properties. So just like with Eat the Rainbow of veggies, just like with Eat variety of different styles of cooking, eating a wide variety of spices will give you different health benefits. The West has really latched onto turmeric and said, oh, turmeric, it's like the healthiest spice. It's amazing. We should have it in everything. It's great. But, so is jeera, so is dhania. Like all of the different spices have their own health properties, and getting a wide range of them is truly great for you. So on that point, I think I completely agree. I think here where I'd caution is, this comes back to the point of not eating the same thing every day, and to try and I guess one other thing which I haven't yet mentioned is try and think about, if you think about your plate, as a circle like this, you would want half of that plate to be fresh. Fresh doesn't mean raw, but as in vegetables that have been cooked or raw, and leafy greens. You would want roughly half of your plate to be fruits and vegetables. Then if you imagine the other half, this is, again, it's not a strict rule, it's just a guideline. Again, you might adjust this according different days or according to your needs. But imagine the other half is again in half. So then a quarter is a source of complex carbohydrates, like say brown rice, red rice, or whole wheat, or aloo, starchy vegetables. And the final thing is your protein. So either your meat, if you're non-veg, or things like dals and tofu, paneer, etc. Now, what I would say about eating biryani every day, once a day, is my question is that allowing you enough room to get enough fruits and vegetables? Biryani is delicious. I really, really enjoy it, but I don't think that it's necessarily a balanced meal that you'd want to eat every day. It's not like a white rice. So the problem with white rice, again, I'm not trying to scaremonger in any way and say that their white rice is really, really bad for you. But generally, it is best to have whole grains, because that is where the nutrient, the protein, and the fiber is. And white rice is simply, another kind of rice that's had all of that removed. And what's left is quicker to cook. And in some ways, it's sort of moreish, like it tastes so yummy. So I guess my point is, have biryani once in a while. The spices are absolutely beneficial, but maybe think about, how can I have more sabzi or more stews or curries which have a wide variety of different plants in them alongside whether it's I'm not sure whether you're referring to a veg or a meat biryani, but either way, they tend to be quite small amounts with almost 80%, depending on how good your biryani is, almost 80% rice. And what I would say is that's absolutely fine once in a while, but try for an everyday food. Think about sort of getting more to that like 50% fruits and veggies, another 25% of a protein source, and your carbs as more of a 25%.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for that answer. So we have another question from Sandeep, who says, we generally watch, say, a movie or a
Yes.
series while eating, right? So where can we progress from this? Like, is this mindful, or can we just eat slowly while watching a movie just for the status?
So I honestly, I love this question because it's very real, right? Like, it's very easy for me to say, okay, right, let's not do anything. Let's not, just sit there and just focus on the flavors. And it's not realistic. I get that. I hear you. And I actually think there's a great way that you can do this. You can challenge yourself. So if you're watching a series, or even if you're watching a movie, you could say, okay, I am going to make this meal last until the end of this episode. So say it's a half an hour episode, or I'm going to make sure that we've got up to 30 minutes on this movie or a long series or whatever. And I'm going to kind of try and slow it down. So you can use what you're doing to help you to slow down, because you have to try and make it last. And then what that naturally does is, I do think that, you can eat mindfully whilst doing something else, but you can sort of switch between. So I feel it would be unrealistic of me to say, okay, no, you can't. You have to just, everybody who's listened and who wants to do this, you have to sit at the table and only focus on the food and close your eyes while you're chewing. It's not realistic. So that's a great way of trying to, incorporate it. And then as you're slowing down to try and make it last for the full episode, I think that you will, you'll find that you do then come back to the flavor. So just try to incorporate the chewing and the flavor element as well, and see whether it enhances your experience. So like a fun thing I used to do is I was watching a series, which I've completely forgotten the name of, but it was a Netflix thing, and it was like a Middle Eastern thing. So I was like making Middle Eastern food and kind of trying to eat really slowly and mindfully, so that, because I was really addicted to the series, which happens, and, kind of use it to actually enhance my experience. Like, wow, the flavors are amazing, and this is such a great show. And it doesn't always have to be matching like that. It was just an example, but you can enhance pleasure with pleasure, right? The pleasure of watching something, feeling relaxed and eating slowly. So I think it's a really, really helpful question, Sandeep. I'm really glad you asked it. And I think that you can do it, and just try to eat. Try and set yourself that challenge to make it last as long as the series, and see if that works, to also give you the touch points of, am I enjoying this? Are the flavors like enhancing this moment as well?
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah, I have a personal question as well. So just wanted to ask you, when you're practicing mindful eating, right, does the quantity really matter, or does it have anything to do with quantity as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I should have touched on that. This goes back to that study, which I mentioned. So quantity, and this is why I'm anti-diet, I don't believe in calorie counting, because it's really, really difficult, to say that is the correct amount for you to eat today. Or why I'm sort of against intermittent fasting as a hard and fast rule, not the principles of it, because lots of people genuinely don't feel hungry for 8 hours, and it's very easy for them to go a long period of time without eating. But if you have a really hard and fast rule, you're basically saying every day is the same. The quantity that you eat, it should be, say, if you want to lose weight, you need to eat this amount every day, and it's the same as this guy and this guy. And that's just not how we work. We're really complex. So try to, again, focus on the hunger scale to guide you as to the quantity, rather than a preconceived idea. So think about all the different things that impact our hunger and the amount that would be suitable for us to eat on any given day, and when to eat, when we actually feel hungry. Your sleep, how well you slept, exercise or just general movement, how active you've been, stress and how stressed you are at work, the situation, are you in like a really, are you having a romantic meal with your partner, or are you, are you in a rush? How much you ate yesterday, what you ate for your last meal, how much water you've drunk that day. There's so many different things that feed into how hungry you are and when your hunger will present, when you start to notice the hunger on the hunger scale. And secondly, how much you need to eat on that given day. And obviously exercise, the amount you've exercised or just moved around on that day. Have you been running around after your kids? Have you been walking to work? Have you been sedentary? Did you do a workout in the morning? All of that will impact the amount. So yes, quantity is important, but I can't tell you what that quantity is, whether on some days it will be less and some days it will be more. And I invite you to remove your own judgment around, oh, why am I hungry today at 11? Normally I don't eat until 12. Or, why today am I really feeling like I need to have a second portion when yesterday I didn't? Try not to judge that, but go tune into the hunger scale and say, is this, am I satisfied, or did I just eat a lot really quickly and I haven't let my stomach, my brain catch up with my stomach? Actually, it takes 20 minutes for your brain to register, for the vagus nerve to really tell your brain how full you are. But some of us have eaten a meal and gone and had a snack and had a second portion all within 15 minutes. So that's why slowing it down is so important. And that will then help you to make a judgment on how much you want to eat each day. And there's another point in here, if we have a bit of time, which is hunger, like different types of hunger. And this is like it could again be a whole other hour-long topic. It's not necessarily just an add-on, but it's just to make people aware that like you can be, you can actually be genuinely hungry and have, a stomach hunger for food. You need energy, you need nourishment, but we also have other types of hunger, like an emotional hunger, which comes on very suddenly, a boredom hunger, which isn't really hunger. So it is also, as we learn to use the scale better, we can start to ask ourselves those questions as well. That will also impact the quantity involved. So I thought maybe we could end with just doing that poll for those who are still left. We had a poll just to ask, which of the 5 tips do you feel the most confident about taking forward?
Sarah, can we move to that slide, please?
So
that the participants can just take a look and answer the poll.
So these are the 5. So just as a reminder, the moment of gratitude, which some of you already do, counting your chews and really slowing down, hand on the table, that's Shiva's one. That's my one as well, that I always say probably is the best place to start. Adopting the hunger and fullness scale. We will, I think that this presentation will be available to you, but by all means, take a photo of it and keep it on your phone so that you can, at the beginning, tune into your hunger and fullness scale. And finally, resigning from the Clean Plate Club. Like, that's a big one for a lot of people, that they may find that they could eat mindfully and slowly, but then they just can't handle that there's food left on their plate. They feel wasteful. They feel that there'll be stigma. And so then they eat it anyway. So you have to kind of do it. You can't do the first 4 if 5 is a big one for you, because you won't be able to leave it even if you are full.
So I think we got the results coming in. 20 people answer. Request all the participants to take part in the poll. And also sort of try and do this when you're having your next meal.
I mean, that's why I really love giving this talk, rather than a talk about, cooking or recipes, because ultimately those things do require prep, time, everything. This can be integrated. You have to eat anyway. So this is a way of eating. You don't have to change what's in your fridge. You don't have to go home and say, right, everyone in the family, we're changing the way we eat. We have to throw out all the food, get new food. From now on, everyone has to do this. You don't have to do anything like that. You personally can do it from your next meal, no matter what that meal is and who it's with. And like I said, if you can involve the people around you that are closest to you, that you tend to eat with, kids, family members, your partner, your friends, it really does help.
So we have the results, Sarah, on your screen. I think number 3 is a clear winner to start off with.
Number 3 is a clear winner, with number 5 coming up. So I think that those 2 are almost like the key ones. If you can get them, then you can get the next ones.
Great.
Well, I hope you can all take away a couple of things from this, and that you can, like we said, just start practicing no matter what your next meal is. Thank you all so much for being here and for listening and for participating and giving such great questions and feedback. I really appreciate it. Lovely.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming this afternoon and taking us to this wonderful presentation. I personally had a lot of things to take away from this session, and I hope all our audience also had something or the other to take away from this. Thank you so much once again. And I would like to also take this moment to thank our audience for being here this afternoon, being throughout the session, understanding the importance of mindful eating. I hope this will be a beginning for, a life-changing journey to take, right? Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure having you.
Thanks so much.